Welcome back. In this lesson, we learn how we can use the iOS simulator to view our applications on our computers. So let's get started. I'm going to head into the Xcode. And when you go to Xcode, you see a window like this in the very first launch that it says there are no recent projects, and then you can either start a new project or open existing projects or such. Now, to start a new project, you can do either of these things. You can press this button, or you can hit Command Shift and N, which is the default way for making new projects, or you can go to File, New Project, and begin a new project from there. I'm going to opt to choose it from here and say create a new Xcode project. And then here there are multiple different choices or templates that you can choose for making applications. Depending on the version of the Xcode that you're using, this menu up here might be a little bit different, but for the most part there is going to be something for the iOS, something for the Mac OS, and all the other operating systems. For me and for this instance, I'm going to choose the iOS, and from the iOS I'm going to choose the app, or if you're using different versions of Xcode, a single view app. That's like the most basic of the applications that has one single page, if you want to call it. So I'm going to select this app, I'm going to hit next, and then there's got to be a bunch of settings in here that we have to go through them. Now, a lot of these settings don't really apply to you at the earliest stages, but you kind of have to add something in here if you want. For the theme, you don't really have to put a theme if you don't have a developer account. You can just put it at none. You have to give your product a name, so I'm going to call this one My First App. That's all I have to do in here. Then it's going to ask you for an organizational identifier. This identifier is basically used to make sure that the name of your application or the name of the bundle of your application becomes a unique name if you so choose to submit it to the App Store, for instance. As long as you're working on your own computer, it doesn't really matter what you put in there, but you have to enter something in here. And usually the tradition is to put the reverse of your website. And if you don't have a website, just put com.apple and that's about it, or com.example or anything like that. As long as it builds this identifier that becomes a unique name, then Xcode doesn't really care what you put in there. It does become a little bit more important once we want to publish our applications, but I guess like we are a little bit far from that point just yet. In terms of the interface, use a storyboard for now. In terms of the life cycle, we use the app delegate. We don't have anything else installed in here. In terms of the language, we use Swift. Objective-C is an older language, is still a very robust and a very strong language, but Swift is a lot easier to work with. And we don't need to use core data or include any tests. So we leave both of these unchecked. So all of these settings, you kind of need to learn them once, and then from this point on, we almost always use exactly the same things in here. Once you set them up and then you hit next, it's going to ask you where would you like to save your application. You just choose somewhere on your computer, and that's pretty much it. Now we have a new application ready for us to develop in Xcode. Now in here, now that I have this new application, we have to learn a lot of things about the interface of Xcode, but I'm not really going to do any of those things. I'm only going to show you something at the top, which is basically this little menu that shows you your different simulators. If you click on it, you probably have more than I have in here. I have limited my work to iPhone 11 only, but you can choose any of the simulators in here. In any case, I want you to go in here, select iPhone 11, and then press this run button in here, which is basically going to build and run your application. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to press this button. It's going to take a little while for the simulator, which is this guy, to launch. And once it launched, we can actually see the application we have developed. Obviously, our application currently is an empty application, doesn't really have anything in it. But this is a screen that showed up for me on the right side of my screen, and for you showed up somewhere as well. This is basically our iOS simulator, which allows us to simulate what we are working on. This is a way for us to see what application we are developing. You can of course use your own device as well, but for the most part throughout the course I will be using the simulator because I want to be able to show you what am I working on. In terms of what simulator you should be using, it really depends on what you're developing. If you're developing an application for iPad, obviously we need to get ourselves a simulator for iPad, which like I said by default is there, but I have disabled them. You can enable or disable any of these simulator by using the show as run destination. Something that I would really recommend for you is that at this earlier stages, do it like mine. Go up here, go to the additional simulators. In here, disable everyone. So I don't want iPad 7, I don't want iPad Air, iPad Pro, iPhone 8 Plus. I only want one type of iPhone, which is iPhone 11, and that's about it. This way I will know that I'm always working on the same kind of device, and it makes my life a lot easier as I'm going through this training material. So that's pretty much it. The very first lesson was about going to here, adding a new project. From the new project, choosing the settings of it. Once we went through those, we went in here and we pressed the run button so we can see our simulator. And that would pretty much end this lesson and allows us to move on to our next one.